Hello, and welcome back to our lesson on the Gospel of John. We have started with our discussion on the introduction of its genre and theme, followed by starting off with discussions on the first chapter. Moving forward, we will discuss about chapter 2 of the Gospel of John.
John 2. On the third day there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Now both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. And when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Jesus said to her,
"Woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour has not yet come."
His mother said to the servants, "Whatever he says to you, do it." Now there were set there 6 water pots of stone, according to the manner of purification of the Jews, containing 20 or 30 gallons apiece. Jesus said to them,
"Fill the water pots with water."
And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them,
"Draw some out now, and take it to the master of the feast."
And they took it. When the master of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine, and did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom, and he said to him, "Every man at the beginning sets out the good wine, and when the guests have well drunk, then that which is inferior. But you have kept the good wine until now." This beginning of signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this he went down to Capernaum, he, his mother, his brothers, and his disciples. And they did not stay there many days.
In John chapter 2, verses 1 to 12, it began with a wedding celebration in Cana. Celebrations during their time ideally lasted for 7 days. This context of celebration expands the themes that emerge through Jesus' actions. It also marks Jesus' first actions of his public ministry, highlighting his identity and relationship with God as the Messiah, and one who embodies God's presence in the reactions of the people around him. Where either in the belief or ignorance or disbelief, he will be able to show his true identity. After the incident, there were results of it by believing in Jesus when he revealed his glory at Cana. His followers became a committed witnesses to his life and ministry when that first miracle happened. What could have transpired during this celebration that made Jesus rise to the rescue? There was a wine shortage, threatened to end the joyous celebration of the wedding. This would shame the host and the family. John says nothing about what caused the wine shortage or other details of how Mary found out about it. And when Jesus found out about it, he addressed Mary, his mother, as a woman. Although unusual, it was not considered rude during that time. It was a statement that Jesus was firm and not easily persuaded or swayed by friends or family with his decision to trust the timing of the Lord in revealing his identity for his first miracle. His reluctance to act on his mother's implied request indicates that to do so, it has serious consequences for both of them. In verse 5, we see that despite Jesus' apparent reluctance to get involved during the miracle without delay, Mary could be seen with submission or in submission to Jesus and told the servants to do whatever he tells you to do. Her comment shows that she trusted Jesus regardless of what he said. In this way, she serves as a model, a follower, and a disciple, one who asks Jesus for help and by faith anticipates his response. The quality of the wine would have reflected well on the bridegroom, whose responsibility it was to provide for the wedding celebration. The counter-cultural timing, quantity, and quality of the wine pointed to the Messiah, the provider, who conducted the miracle under unusual expectations.
Now the Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And he found in the temple those who sold oxen and sheep and doves, and the money changers doing business. When he had made a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the changers' money, and overturned the tables. And he said to those who sold doves,
Take these things away. Do not make my Father's house a house of merchandise.
Then his disciples remembered that it was written, Zeal for your house has eaten me up. So the Jews answered and said to him, What sign do you show to us since you do these things? Jesus answered and said to them,
Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up.
Then the Jews said, It has taken 46 years to build this temple, and will you raise it up in 3 days? But he was speaking of the temple of his body. Therefore, when he had risen from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this to them, and they believed the scripture and the word which Jesus had said.
Now, let's move forward to John chapter 2, verses 13 to 22, Jesus at the temple. His arrival in the city followed immediately before Passover and his trial and crucifixion. Jesus driving out the vendors of animals and other things from the temple was narrated during the beginning of his ministry, not at the end. You might want to relate this incident to present time about those who are using the church building for another purpose aside of a place of worship. We might start to ask questions such as why the church is being used as a cafe or a badminton court or other purpose for it, or maybe similar to the scripture that we have read. I would answer depending on the intention of how it will be used. If the motive is pure, if the intention and purpose of it is for evangelism, we can do it. But as we see it in the scripture, the temple was used for profit, for trade, and as a marketplace, which shows why Jesus was really disappointed in this incident. Jesus' clearing of the temple occasioned his arrest. The Jews responded calmly, given Jesus' provocative action. After this incident, the scripture shifts its focus to the people and how Jesus performed signs and miracles. These signs mentioned in the scripture refer to the Passover festival mentioned in the book of Exodus. Through those signs mentioned in Jewish history, God's power and character were revealed, so as these signs were shown by Jesus. These testified at how powerful Jesus was during that time. As we continue our discussion, I'd like you to discuss the following questions that we will put on your screen. What is your church or fellowship's understanding of worship? And number 2, is there a certain place where we expect God to be encountered in our lives? When Jesus challenges our preconceptions of what God is doing in us or where we may encounter God, his actions seem to replace our previous notions with how we react and think for ourselves. Let us be reminded that Jesus did not replace the Jewish practices, but instead he fulfilled the promises and highlighted them to their original purpose so people would also see God's presence through his performed miracles. As a summary of John 2, God's presence through the ordinary, through the possible things like marriage, celebrations, wine, the temple building, and the human body was a revelation of Jesus' identity. We also learn that Jesus claimed that God's presence was found in him and not in geographical places, so making constant worship is possible wherever. We only need to be pure and holy and change from glory to glory, and that defines the cause of our true worship. It is also showing Cana's abundant joy and new temples needed for sacrifice, which was part of our discussion. For our discussion questions, you might want to answer the following. Number one, where do we expect to encounter God now? Where are we likely to miss seeing Jesus? Number two question, are we claiming to see God's bigger vision or plan for us or the challenges that we face in our lives? And lastly, what is our personal story of the joy of Jesus' salvation in our own lives? I hope you enjoyed our discussion today and may the Lord bless you all.